From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. Today's episode focuses on a particular school of thought. It's an organization that prizes itself on exclusivity, on the idea of initiation, accreting knowledge incrementally, and, yes, a form of magic. So today's question, what is the Golden Dawn? Here are the facts. Full name of it, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Today, we see it as an odd group somewhat forgotten by the mainstream, but it played a fundamental role in today's magical organizations. The weirdest thing about it was at the time, in the 1890s, 1880s or so, it was, well, I think it kind of functioned like a social network. I don't know what you guys think as you dive in, but, you know, with magic, right? It's kind of an augmented reality. The more we think about it, similar to the Latitude Society. They took ideas that were a unique combination of ancient, pre-existing spiritual traditions and then other stuff that was happening right before it in the realm of science and spiritualism. So like the Kabbalah, Egyptian, Greek mysteries, several strands of early Christian thought, all these esoteric traditions combined in the late 1880s, and the story of the origin, we'll let you be the judge. The story of the origin feels a little sketchy.
Yeah, indeed. The Hoot God. Okay, right? Hoot God. Sorry, Ben, you got to help us out here. What is this acronym? I love the way this is.
That's me being lazy in the notes. It's just shorthand for the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
That's the one. Yep.
They didn't call themselves Hoot God.
We talked off mic how that would be a fantastic name for likely a Florida rapper, perhaps. Gulf Coast, I believe is what you said, Ben.
Yeah, I think so. Gulf Coast.
Coast
the name's indeed out there. It's a great idea.
Okay. All right. So the Hoot God, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, was founded in 1887 by a Freemason by the name of William Wynne Westcott. WWW. Lots of fun alliteration there. Also in this group of founders was Samuel Liddell McGregor Matthews and William Robert Woodman, the least impressive of those three names.
And all of them were Masons.
Yes, indeed. Correct. A group of Masons. And allegedly, they based their founding of this group on a series of writings that were collectively known as the Cipher manuscripts, which is definitely the name of the first album from Hoot God. No question about that. So these cipher manuscripts are a group of 60 different folios, I guess you could call them, outlining a series of magical intention rites or rituals, right? A ritual is something that is intended to produce a result through synchronized incantations or something, or movement. Various things can go into a ritual. This podcast contains quite a few rituals, in fact. You might not even realize it. But these things were corresponding to the spiritual elements of air, earth, water, and fire.
And hard. Kidding.
Yeah. No, I was about to say, their powers combined, they are, in fact, Captain Planet.
Yeah, and you can think about these rituals and rites, the things that were contained in these manuscripts, somewhat like a mixtape, really. It's an anthology. We already mentioned it above. All of these varying thoughts and schools of thought kind of going together into one thing. All types of different, what you would call magical theory, either with a C or a K, mostly with a K. And a lot of it is just steeped in symbolism. So when you're looking at these things, the reason why Hoot God is so interesting and funny to me, it reminds me of Minerva and representations of the owl. And we were just speaking about this on a listener mail episode.
Esoteric wisdom, right?
Yeah. And really this manuscript, the cipher manuscript, is kind of like a beginner's manual, but it's also the advanced stuff kind of all together in one. It's just everything you need to operate as a member of the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn.
Yeah, so if you look at the watermarks on these folios, on the actual text themselves, it looks like they were created back in 1809. So that's one theory. They are written in code, and like you said, Matt, they contain diagrams, symbols, but they also contain this written text. It's not a particularly difficult code to crack. Numbers are substituted by Hebrew letters. So, for example, Aleph equals 1. According to the order's own records, Westcott himself discovered/decoded the text in around 1887, like we said, when the order was founded. It's important to note that these founding members, they all had day jobs. That's going to be a complicating factor in just a bit. Westcott claimed that he had just found these or been given them. He did not say that he had written them, though later historians would suspect, indeed some of his colleagues would accuse him of just writing them himself and then claiming some more prestigious authorship. They could have also possibly been written by Edward Bulwer Lytton, who was a popular author at the time associated with some of these occult beliefs, or a lot of fans of his work were also fans of these sorts of magical practices. Today, you'll recognize Bulwer Lytton most easily as the inspiration of one of my favorite contests, the Bulwer Lytton Fiction Contest. Have you guys heard about this?
No.
Never.
It's
another great name, though.
I suggest we all consider entering the contest, just if you're bored of an afternoon one day. It's an official annual contest to write the worst opening sentence of any possible novel. And I haven't won yet. Like you try to imagine what the worst novel ever would be, and then you write the first sentence for that novel. That should give you a sense of the kind of writing Bulwer Lytton did when he was alive.
Wow. Do grammatical errors count toward the badness of it, or do you just have to get that stuff right? It's just the arrangement, or no, I guess the words that you put in there, grammatically correct, just need to be terrible.
Sky's the limit, I say. Get creative with it. The winner of 2020's contest was Lisa Kluber of San Francisco. This is the winning sentence. Her Dear John missive flapped unambiguously in the windy breeze, hanging like a pizza menu on the doorknob of my mind. I thought that was all right. They won. Anyway,
that feels more exciting than it should. I disagree.
Pizza menu, like one of the things with the little doorknob holes in it, right? Okay, got it.
Back to these texts. We don't know who really wrote them, but there are some guesses. We're going to give you the version of the order itself, and then we'll give you some of the critics' ideas. So Westcott told his compatriots that not only had he decoded these texts, which illuminated various mysteries, but in the process of deciphering this stuff, he found the address of a German aristocrat and Rosicrucian named Anna Sprengel. Anna Sprengel was not your average aristocrat. Westcott believed that she had the ability to contact some sort of supernatural and or extra-dimensional entity, which they were collectively referred to as the secret chiefs, which is a term I had never heard before. Like, we've heard machine elves, right?
So allegedly, the Hidden Kings are the ones who wrote this thing?
Or inspired, guided the hand of the person who did write them, right? And this isn't necessarily a new idea. The idea of divinely inspired written text, right? This is something that dates back to religions of old. It continues today with various organizations. The secret chiefs themselves are specifically mentioned in earlier works, like one called The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary back in 1795, by a name that, Noel, I will defer to your German in pronouncing.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I want to make all our listeners in Germany proud. Karl von Eckartshausen.
Okay.
Maybe it's more of an Eckartshausen. I may be doing too hard of an SH, but I've given it my all. This is the best I can do.
I like both of them.
Thanks, man.
So I love it. So this gentleman allegedly wrote this thing way before. Well, so he wrote this work, The Cloud Upon the Sanctuary, in 1790s, 1795, something like that.
Exactly. So we see a rough timeline that we can trace through the use of these particular phrases, right? This is secret chiefs, hidden kings, stuff like that. The Golden Dawn did differ from some earlier, arguably similar groups. It even differed from some groups that would exist around the same time period because it did not restrict membership along the lines of gender. Unlike Freemasonry, women were treated as equals and allowed into this order. It's progressive for its time. So things started going wrong pretty quickly. Spoiler, Westcott had to leave leadership of the order when he literally lost some papers in a cab. He just forgot to take them. You know, it's like leaving your phone in an Uber, but you have the Necronomicon with you on your phone or something.
Or your phone is the Necronomicon.
Your phone is the Necronomicon. So the secret chiefs did not appear to help him out as far as his day job goes, because word got to his employers. They discovered his connection to this group that at the time would seem pretty odd, and they gave him a choice. They said, look, you can keep working here and stop messing around with magic, WW, or you can leave because you will be fired. So Westcott thought about it. We don't know too many of the specifics. Ultimately, he said, I'm going to stick with my career as a coroner. And I am going to still be associated, low key with this group, but I'm not going to be an active, prominent member because I got bills to pay.
Wait a second. He was a coroner and he was dabbling in magic?
Yes.
Does that mean he was he stealing organs and other gutty parts from black magic CK rituals?
Well, I mean, if you wanted to be a necromancer, that's a pretty good place to start.
Yeah, no one's going to miss an errant spleen here and there.
That's true. I thought the same thing too. I couldn't find, and tell us if you have an inside scoop, folks, but I couldn't find any reports of that. But look, this is a true story, and the rest of the story of the group's origin and its evolution quickly descends into a story of obscure conspiracies, wheels within wheels, competing motivations, competing magical philosophies, secret societies forming like within secret societies, and then a study of just good old-fashioned backstabbing. But what actually happened to the Golden Dawn? And perhaps most importantly, did any of the magic work? Here's where it gets crazy. Let's tackle those two questions separately, right? What actually happened to the organization, and how did the organization work? And then we'll get to the magic. We have to get to the magic at some point.
So yeah, let's talk about how popular the old Golden Dawn was in its heyday, if you will. It was a big part of Victorian society. Strangely enough, you wouldn't imagine that magic was running wild in regular society. Well, yes, somewhat, not fully, but somewhat, right? There were all kinds of notable members from the top of society all the way down to the bottom. There was one member named Annie Horniman. This person actually built Ireland's Abbey Theatre. Have you ever heard of that? That's a famous theater that exists. This person built that. She was also a member of the Golden Dawn. Pretty cool, huh?
Mm-hmm. And then there were a lot of poets and authors involved. Like William Butler Yeats is probably one of the most famous members of the Golden Dawn, or one of the most well remembered in the modern day. And he is on record saying that other than writing poetry, which he's kind of known for, the other most important pursuit of his life was his membership in the Golden Dawn, which is a big thing to say. Other authors like Algernon Blackwood were also members, and then well-to-do people, scientists, folks who were practicing forms of meditation, things like that, folks who were just interested in hanging out and talking about this stuff.
Oh, really quickly, I just wanted to mention, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, that our buddy Alex Williams' podcast, Ephemeral, did like a special Halloween episode where they did a reading of a Algernon Blackwood story.
Yeah, and we were literally talking about that a few hours ago, about how influential Algernon was and is still
on like horror writing, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a tremendously influential horror writer. So it makes sense that in his non-authorial time, he would be interested in these sorts of spiritual, philosophical explorations. But of course, there is one other person associated with the Order of the Golden Dawn in a controversial way. This is a guy who you are doubtlessly familiar with if you've listened to our show before. He's occasionally referred to as the Great Beast.
That's right. Aleister Crowley. I'm saying Crowley on purpose. You could call him Crowley if you want, but after the comments on YouTube, I will forever see his name, be traumatized, and then say, Crowley, it's Crowley. But you're aware of that name, and you're likely aware of the Golden Dawn because of him. At least I certainly was.
Mm-hmm. And we'll dive into his association, which I think gets a little bit exaggerated sometimes, given the rest of his other work post Golden Dawn. But the downfall of this organization, or the troubles it would have in its evolution, these were all present in the early days in its formation. For the first few years, it was a single group of people studying these cipher manuscripts together, right? And they were reading this stuff saying, hey, what do you think about this philosophy of air? You know what I mean? Or this passage about fire. This group, this initial group, would later be called the Outer Order or the First Order. And all you did in the First Order was get graded by fellow members and superiors in terms of your understanding of the arts and philosophies explored in those initial texts we mentioned: earth, air, fire, water. You began as a neophyte. You eventually progressed through several ranks to become a kind of intermediate. Why is there an intermediate thing if the Outer Order is like complete? Well, it's because in 1892, a secret society kind of begins in this secret society. It calls itself the Inner Order, or the Second Order, the cool part of the cool kids club. And this Second Order is entirely composed of people who have literally passed a written examination about the stuff from the First Order. And you can join up with the First Order, but getting into the Second Order requires social approval. The other people that are already in the order have to dig you. They have to think you're on the same page. And that's where you start learning what we as outsiders would probably call practical or applied magic and ritual. But it doesn't end there. They have three ranks: Adeptus Minor, Major, and at the top, Exemptus. There is a third order, however, and this is really where it gets really weird. If the third order is real, then Matt, I was thinking of our conversations about that excellent video game Control that you had recommended a while back. If the third order is real, it's composed of things that are like those extra dimensional monsters in Control.
It's the board.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. It's what do we call it? The secret chiefs, right? Like they exist in another realm, in another place, but that they are the power structure that is above even the adept and the exemptus.
Yeah. And if you are exemptus, or if you are high enough in your understanding and your membership in the Second Order, then you can function as an intermediate for these otherwise unobservable entities. And this, of course, rankles some feathers, especially when Mather, the guy we mentioned earlier, when he starts being a very strict leader, and he's like the voice of these entities, and no one else can communicate with them except for him. He brings the divine knowledge.
Oh, he's got the hotline, or what was it called? He's like in that room that's separated from everything, and you pick up the phone and you can talk to the board.
Mm-hmm.
That's him.
That's him. So as you can see, This tendency for in-groups to create even more insular groups within themselves eventually led to tension, distrust, internal conflict, and ultimately these conflicts led to the downfall of the organization after its, wait for it, golden age. It did have a golden age. I'm sorry. We had to. It did have a golden age though, because at the time, it was something that people accept, like it was controversial at first, but eventually it became an accepted thing in society. It wasn't seen as necessarily in opposition to the status quo, if that makes sense. Like it was no longer something you would necessarily get fired for. In fact, it might have made you look kind of cool. And despite these earlier problems, the Golden Dawn, some version of it, exists today in the modern day in multiple places. It is possible to become a member, and we can tell you how toward the end of today's show.
Oh, but can't wait. But Ben,
Yeah.
where is this like really magic, or is it sort of symbolic magic, like for the sake of the club and camaraderie? Like, do they really think they're affecting, outcomes of like world events, or like how deep does this go?
It's a great question.